Hello everybody, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes, DM-only live stream Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Kales, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away. This is not meant for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all our D&D live series, as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page, and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson, and join our official Discord discussion group. Invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, and Chris, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Yuma, Marcos, David, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Rosh, and Lumpy Spuds. Thank you all very much for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use open broadcaster software with Streamlabs, and I always make sure to wash my hands. But to be honest, I probably don't do it for a full 20 seconds. That's a really long time if you think about it. I assume most people aren't. I assume most people are good about generally washing their hands and brushing their teeth and doing all that stuff, but maybe, we don't do it all as much as we should in terms of how long we do it for. So, but yeah, I hope everybody is staying healthy because, man, Twitter is a really scary place right now. And news in general, not good. What is also scary, however, is the Tomb of Annihilation, which is what we're going to talk about. Sometimes the fantasy world can be, despite a horrible dungeon, be less scary than the real world. We're going to do a recap of last week's episode, and also at the top of this Crafting Annihilation session, if you haven't already seen, we are not running Tomb of Annihilation tomorrow. We still have half our party out. Reese and Michelle were on vacation this whole week. So last week we had a smaller party, which means we had a shorter session, but I still wanted to have some kind of session. And then this week, Chris is actually going to DM a one-shot for us, which I'm really excited about. We're all really excited about. Of course, Chris is an amazing DM. He ran our Storm King's Thunder campaign. And that is going to be during our normal scheduled broadcast this week. And it looks like it's going to be basically the one shot we did that I ran for our Halloween special, which was The Secrets of the Blind Palace. It'll be that party, but obviously Chris won't be there with his gnome druid. Instead, it'll be me with a new character, and we'll be playing at level 4, so actually leveling up the one-shot crew. And I'm excited to play this character, and I will reveal them during our stream tomorrow. And then we'll be back to our regular schedule Tomb of Annihilation broadcast next week. So that means, if my math is correct, I believe I get 2 crafting Annihilation sessions between now and then. So we're going to recap what just happened. I'm also excited for the one-shot, Nick. And it's also Friday the 13th tomorrow. And given the name of the one-shot that Chris is running, something Blood Halls, expect something horror-themed for sure. So that'll be very cool. So this was a shorter session that I ran because, as I said, we had only had half the party, but I really liked the way that this puzzle door sequence played out. It's always difficult planning puzzles and riddles and that kind of thing for players because, especially if it's a main quest thing, if there's a side puzzle that involves some kind of thing, then maybe you can let them not solve it, but that's still very unsatisfying. But if it's obviously a main, barrier of entry, you want to design a puzzle in a way that your players will solve, but they also feel smart and clever while solving it. And that can be a very, very difficult thing to design. Everybody's at different levels of, how comfortable they are with different kinds of puzzles and that whole thing. So It's always interesting to see how well some of these things work out. For example, one of the shrine puzzles that I ran from the book fell completely flat on its face. I forget which one that was, but it was one that I remember in crafting afterwards. I was like, this just totally didn't work at all. The one where they had to like match the like word cipher on the other puzzle thing, and they had to do the darkness clue and all that. None of that worked out at all. Basically, just had to tell them they stumbled upon the solution after I gave them some clues, and then everybody just felt really dissatisfied over it. So that's an example of one that didn't go well. This one I thought went over really, really well. I was very clear on. They were initially very confused because this was the only doorway here is this false entrance, and Mannix is built for perception, which is going to be an interesting hurdle as a DM because from the very beginning of this campaign, he wanted to make a character whose like best quality was like noticing traps and perceiving things and not getting snuck up on and all these things. So I don't want to take that away from him, which is why I put down these rules to create a very clear step-by-step process for, okay, how exactly does perception work and how exactly does passive perception work in the tomb? And what I came up with, and based on, I think, what we talked about during last week's Crafting Annihilation, which was very helpful, passive perception is active, but only within your immediate adjacency. So anything within 5 feet. In other words, passive perception has an aura of 5 feet around you, where if you walk, by a secret door, or if you're stepped up to where you're right in front of a trap, you don't have to say anything. I, as the DM, will say, "Hey, you notice blah blah blah." And sometimes that might not be a literal like, "Hey, you notice this whole trap construction." It might just be you notice something off. I want to try to get better about that and just kind of maybe tease things without literally explaining them if I can. Sometimes it's just like you see a raised pressure plate. Well, you can probably put 2 and 2 together about what's up with that. But I liked that idea of passive perception is only right nearby. Now, you can always roll perception actively, but you as the player have to tell me, okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to roll for perception. Now, the crazy thing is, Mannix, I guess this happened after he just leveled up to 9. His passive perception is fucking 20 now. So he will literally spot every secret door. It's a DC 20 to spot secret doors in the tomb. He will spot every secret door in the tomb if he walks by them, or he will spot them if he at least tells me he's rolling a perception check. Because the way I believe passive perception is supposed to work is that it is like your bare minimum perception. If you're rolling for perception, it means you're trying to get better than just passively walking around noticing things. But it doesn't make any sense unless there's some kind of other circumstance, like there's darkness around or something. It doesn't make any sense that you would be able to roll worse than what you can passively detect. So it's almost perfunctory to even have Mannix roll perception, because using that rule, he'll never make less than a 20, so he's always going to notice everything. But I am going to force him as the player to tell me that you are rolling perception here, or he has to be right next to something. So that's the rule I came up with. And again, he's built for that. I don't want to take that away from him. He specifically put a lot of points and skills. I mean, we know how hilariously inept he is at combat. He's only got, he has fewer than 50 hit points at level 9, which is pretty crazy. So I'm okay with it. I just wanted to make sure we had some firm rules on how that worked. But that is the advantage to having this character in their party, is that he is built to notice things. So that doesn't necessarily mean he'll survive them if they do go off. And a lot of things, even if you do notice it, it doesn't mean that you can avoid it. Like some things are just, you're going to have to survive it, but that should help. And then I also made a rule about there is a group perception check if everybody in the room wants to actually, which again, a lot of this stuff is just perfunctory because Mannix alone should be able to find fucking everything. But you still want to involve the team when you can. And sometimes it might not be Mannix able to perceive. Maybe the party will split up and then those things will matter a little bit more. So we'll see. I also going to make sure I'm a little more strict on if he has detect magic up and how long it's lasted and all that kind of stuff, and really force him to sit there and remember to cast it and use it and keep concentration up. Just kind of as a reminder, not just like, oh, you've automatically got detect magic on all the time. Like, no, I really want you to have to cast it in the tomb. Not that I expect to like interrupt him while he casts it, because 10 minutes, whatever. All right. Anyway, so in other words, Mannix noticed everything in this room pretty quickly. He noticed the gas, noticed the holes, he noticed the stone door, so it was all a bit of a problem. Beyond that, he noticed the gas chamber. They noticed the 8 holes and not the 9 cubes. So they were very confused initially to where they were stumped. And at the very beginning, I was like, oh no, this is not going well. And then finally, they're like, okay, well, let's go down this hallway, which they did. And immediately, I started giving them information, and they started doing a pretty good job. And again, Detect Magic helped him, and Mannix marching down with the cubes and things lighting up and showing. And thankfully, the whole like the basins of oil lighting up, kind of forced him to march down, or motivated him to march down the statues and then find the hidden statue. All of this worked out really, really well. So he found Unk's statue. There's the 9. He got the pendant. I had the pendant kind of drag him over to this area. The dynamic lighting and the tokens and all that worked out really well. They saw the true entrance. All of that was really cool. And then we get to the actual door puzzle. And once again, I thought this went over pretty well. I did end up creating a separate, let's see if I can find it. There we go. So in the chapter, they have a sample. Let's see, where is that sample at? It's a sample door puzzle. I thought it was in chapter 5. Is it in chapter? Oh, there it is. Possible door solution. So you can see I literally took this one, which is what we get in Tomb of Annihilation. This is showing a sample correct solution. It's interesting because the players, Celeste specifically, thought of the clock and the time of day and all that, which was something I hadn't even thought of. In terms of where to place everybody. And I think it did end up lining up because that's what they ended up using. So I guess that was a clue as to where everybody lines up. If you think about this thing as a clock face, and like at morning this happens, at evening this happens, and all that. It's not even that strict. All you have to do is make sure the rival gods, which is a big thing, like the statues are opposite each other. The Acerex warning, which is on the obelisk, the enemies oppose. That's all about making sure the rival gods are opposite each other. That's all you have to worry about. And what I did to give them a visual handout is I literally just took this piece of art and just blanked out all of the inside pieces, made sure to copy and paste the actual, in case my players were going to be that, like, scrutinous. I copied and pasted, I believe, this first one here, Egen, and then I blanked them out because they're all, if you notice, slightly different looking stone blocks. So if you just looked at the outside, you could try to piece them together. But that, just to give them a visual aid about like, okay, what are we actually looking at? So I was really, really pleased that they immediately picked up on it. And he detected the evocation magic coming out. They didn't take a single point of damage from any of these traps. And I was pleased because they solved it really well. It didn't take up too much time, but they did spend a good amount of time on it, like discussing amongst themselves, like, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's the plan. I loved that at one point Raymond even wrote down like the things on a piece of paper and showed that, like, here's what we want to do. I was just really, really pleased with how this entire sequence went over. So I really like that. So thumbs up to Wizards of the Coast for designing a pretty fun little door puzzle, giving just enough hints and ideas about how to do and make it feel pretty rewarding to the players for avoiding this entire false entrance, which is interesting because that's a really crazy thing to do to a dungeon, just a completely false entrance and then have the real entrance. All right, then we got to a part where the party did end up tripping a sequence, which was, is this all dark right there? Is that I guess that's my actual token being there. This is a fantastic, I love this puzzle so much. So the players enter this hallway, and this skull, and there's a lever, and whenever you get into the hallway, this timer emerges and counts down as a sand timer, and the DM is just supposed to count down from 10. And the solution to the puzzle is the players are supposed to do nothing. If you just sit there and do nothing, the doors open and you go on your merry way. But Mannix panicked and flipped the lever. I'm delighted that he did so because it drops everybody into these sharpened spikes pits. Now, in the text, in the actual campaign book, there is no dex save. the only person who gets a dex save is the person hanging onto the lever, which I think is bizarre because almost everything in D&D that's a trap or anything like that involves a dex save. Now, you could maybe say, like, well, you can't really dodge these spikes, but it's already like you hit 1d4 spikes, so it's already kind of random on which ones you hit. So I just took that as meaning, okay, I'm going to let everybody have a dex save, just use a DC 15, and if you succeed, then you'll just take like half the damage you normally, instead of trying to do like, okay, this person takes this many spikes, this person takes this many spikes. That was already going to be really tedious. So I think if you recall, during that session, I started having people roll for spikes, and then I immediately was like, all right, I'm just going to roll the same damage, which was assuming 3 spikes on a 1d4, 3d6 plus 3d10, which is a pretty big amount of damage. You can see averaging 30 damage. If you failed the saving throw, if you succeeded, then you could take half of that, but you also have the poisoned condition. Celeste was able to use evasion. I think I did that right. I'm not sure, but it just says if she ever has to make a dex saving throw to an effect, it just says an effect that allows you to make a dex saving throw to take only half damage. So I made this effect have a dex saving throw for half damage, and because I declared that, then she could use evasion. If I hadn't done that and I had done as written in the book, then evasion would not apply because there wouldn't have been a dex save there. But I did let people have dex saving throws, so she was able to evade the spikes and land all carefully. And Mannix used one of his finite items, his balloon pack, to float gently down. So, balloon pack could have been useful in a lot of different situations in the dungeon. And frankly, as a DM, I really do love to see players use those finite items, because that tells me they are having to expend those resources, and that's a carefully considered decision. And it motivates me to give them more of those finite items. So I was pleased to see Mannix do that. And I did allow them to, if you were able to control your descent. And again, I didn't know, is the whole thing covered in spikes? Is it kind of random spikes everywhere? I basically declared that you could be, once you were down there, you could video game rules are like, if you touch any of that area, you're just auto dead, usual. I declared that they could, once you were down there, you could maneuver kind of around the spikes, or if you were floating down. So Celeste and Mannix didn't take any damage, nor were afflicted by poison. And poison's pretty nasty. You have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls for 24 hours, unless a lesser restoration spell or similar magic is used. So that is a big deal. Straight up disadvantage. Theron did not fall in because, unfortunately, neither of the players were there. So I had to try to, and again, I didn't want to go too far without them. So I did put Orvix and Gillian in the hallway. Theron I had outside because he was a Theronsaurus, so it wouldn't have really fit in the hallway. And there aren't any rules about climbing out of the pit. I don't believe it's that. Well, it is 20 feet deep. I didn't even do like an athletics check at that point because it just seemed kind of tedious to have everybody roll climbing checks and do all that. So at that point, the fun of the pit has happened. The fun to me. And they were able to use Theron's like tail, and a Allosaurus isn't 20 feet long, all that stuff, whatever. They can climb a little bit along the ledges. That's fine. I didn't really, originally I was thinking, okay, maybe there'll be an athletics check and people have to climb out, but I didn't want to get into all of that. And I think we were kind of nearing, I didn't want to have this session go too long. So this was definitely me like kind of speeding things up for the sake of not having a super long session when we only have half the party. Then we got to an area of the hallway where Mannix's perception kicked off. Now, you might be thinking, well, Eric, why didn't you have his passive perception notice the seam in the middle of the floor? I probably could have, honestly, but it's not a very obvious trap. I guess I could have just mentioned it was maybe like a tiled floor or something. It looked like tile. I could have been a little bit more description, but I thought the main description of the hallway was the doorway, the lever, and the skull. That was a good distraction tool from the actual floor. Whereas in this case, and it wasn't a very obvious, there weren't like pressure plates or holes in the walls or that kind of thing. In this case, this one, I thought the trap was a lot more obvious with the discolored. How does it described in that thing? Careful inspection of the floor and a successful 15 wisdom perception check. Character notes irregularities in the tile's floor pattern that reveal the pressure plates. So I did have Mannix's passive perception as soon as he walked there. And, if they keep Mannix in the lead, him and George, when George was about to step forward, and I like Mannix, stopping him, especially if they keep Mannix in the lead, which that could have consequences because obviously there's, occasional monsters and stuff. He will be able to notice these kind of things. And that was a good example of, okay, you notice these pressure plates, the holes in the walls. You can put 2 and 2 together about what this entails. And it looks like the way it's set up, this wasn't designed to be some kind of feat of acrobatics or anything to get beyond this hallway. It was just a question of noticing where they are and then kind of threading the needle between the pressure plates. So as long as you notice them, and again, this was me wanting to reward Mannix for having that passive perception and for being in the lead of the party. This is the exact kind of trap situation that he should be able to curtail. So knowing that, that'll be very interesting with trying to preemptively plan a lot of these different areas and traps. Mainly, I want to try to get ahead of certain traps and areas, provide descriptions that aren't super complete and obvious. And I did mention he could roll then an investigation or arcana check to try to delve further, and he's obviously pretty good at both of those, so he would be able to check on most things. And I think that would be more enjoyable for the party in general if they, instead of giving all those gotchas of oh, you walked into a trap and here this happens, instead they know about a trap, but ideally they still have to then come up with a way of getting past it. And I think that would actually be more enjoyable, so they can kind of employ some interesting tactics and stuff. Then I unleashed my little storytelling moment, which was Withers greeting them as they entered the tomb. And this was something that, as much as I love the design of the Tomb of the Nine Gods, it is very, very low on social role-playing opportunities. There are some, but and Tomb of Annihilation in general, and this is a problem with a lot of 5e adventures, is they don't have good villains. And that's something that's very difficult to do in D&D when the entire focus is on our heroes. I think I mentioned this near the beginning of our campaign, but if you're watching it, and I always think of it as a show that I'm producing, you always have those cutaways to what are the villains doing? What are their plans and all this? And you don't really have that in D&D. You're always solely focused on the heroes. Everything is from their point of view. Their awareness of everything that's going on is from their point of view. So I've tried to do that a little bit with the Night Hags, with the Sohn sisters. I was able to jack with the players kind of throughout the campaign and try to put more of a personality on the villain machinations, because Acererak is such a bullshit villain in this campaign. He only literally shows up at the very final moments to fight the players. He's just not an entity at all. So I was trying to use more villains. That's why I try to use the UNT more often, because they were some fun antagonists to use. People like Zendala, kind of a loose cannon, that kind of thing. The pirates of Jahaka Anchorage. And in this case, I am using Withers. And Withers is is kind of like the lead architect / engineer / I guess landlord of the Tomb of the Nine Gods. It was I believe a former Omoan, and Acererak liked his trap design so much, kind of put him in charge of this area. And so Withers is basically in charge of designing the traps, making sure the traps are all reset. He's got the tomb dwarfs that works for him, and they create all the tomb guardians. And I because the whole thing is ridiculous. It's this whole death trap dungeon for what? Just so Acererak can fuck with, heroes? It seems so odd. And the way I flavored that is they specifically do this because they want adventurers to get as far as possible and persevere, and then finally to die in the most excruciating ways, because that creates a more delicious soul or more powerful soul to then feed Acererak initially, and then this soulmonger, which he's created to specifically feed the dead god fetus baby that he found that he's nourishing. So that was something I wanted to kind of explain to the players in universe about why the fuck is there this giant death trap funhouse nightmare dungeon that they have to make it through. So instead of them making through and all the villains being surprised and all this stuff, it's no, Withers is fully aware of what's going on and kind of invites the adventurers in, basically, and says, hey, welcome. we're glad that you've made it here. We hope you enjoy your stay, but also we hope you die terribly and make it pretty far. I wanted to tease a couple things. First, I wanted to tease that the Stone Sisters are still around, but that they're really not going to be much of a factor throughout this dungeon, with one exception, and I'll get to that. And obviously, they're kind of a mid boss near the end. And I wanted to tease the keys, the skeleton keys, because that is a main quest that the party doesn't know about yet. So I do enjoy that. As crazy open design as this dungeon is, which look at this there's this giant spiral staircase, square I guess, and it goes down literally 4 floors, and then the hole at the bottom of the 4th floor, it's just a shaft, goes down to level 5. So literally, if you wanted to, you could just take a running jump down, you take a bazillion falling damage because it's, I think, 20 feet of floor or something, 15, and then another 20 drop from the shaft. You could go from level 1 to 5, so I'm trying to say. So from a DM design standpoint, it's not like I can sit here and design, okay, now I'm going to talk about level 1, now I'm going to talk about level 2. I mean, you hope that the party is going to do that, but you have no fucking idea because of how open this design is. And they can take this side secret staircase to go down to Withers's kind of like back design shop, and then he's got a spiral staircase that goes all the way down to level 5. So it's really crazy how open design this dungeon is. But, and this is the key, the key, the party has to find 5 skeleton keys in order to unlock the gate to the final boss, which is very video gamey, and I love it because I think that's a really fun reason to force the players, not force them, but, well, yeah, we are forcing them to explore each level. So the idea is 5 keys, 1 on each of the 5 levels of the dungeon. And it's up to me as the DM on where I want to put these keys. One interesting thing that they did to the design, I really like the new zoom tool for Roll20, by the way. It's really smooth. They put all these little skull symbols on the map. They're on the GM layer. But the skull symbols, and I kind of moved them off to get them out of the way, are supposed to designate where those skeleton keys could appear. And the skeleton keys are literally skeletons with like weird shaped heads that go in the skeleton door. Let's see if I have a picture of skeleton gate handout. There it is. So this is the cool door. This is the door to the final boss. And it literally has keys of different shapes. So all these skeletons have heads, and you're supposed to take you could kill the skeleton, obviously. And which I want to have a lot of fun with the skeleton. I really want to create some comic relief in here because it's such a deadly, terrifying dungeon that I think you're going to need that levity. And the levity is, 1, Withers is going to be kind of a funny figure, a very droll, serious and darkly humorous character. And then the skeleton keys, they're supposed to be regular skeletons. I'm going to make them like little gnome-sized skeletons that just like run around really quick and try to run away from everybody, maybe like laugh and taunt and just be like really crazy. They're not really meant to be combatants at all. And I think it would be fun to use the keys to have them be on the move while the players are moving. And especially once the players first see a key, have that key then run into an area so the players know, okay, we need to make it into this area. Now, the only weird thing is the players don't know they need these keys. So I went back and forth on how much I want to explain about this dungeon right at the front. And I don't think I want to be too open about like, hey, there's a door at the bottom. You need 5 keys, blah, blah, blah. That just seems a little too much. The bummer would be, and I guess I could always change this and have Withers appear and explain things if they really are maybe missed something. But the bummer would be if they make it all the way to this gate and realize like they missed a key on level 3 or something and then have to go back up. That would be a little bit of a bummer narrative-wise, I think. But maybe not. Maybe I could, that would be another different kind of challenge. Although getting through the Gears of Hate can be kind of super challenging. So the idea was I was going to tease the keys. The tease of the keys. So during the Withers dialogue scene, he explained. I'm trying to look at my notes right now. Oh yeah, he said, "Guard the gate in case they make it that far. The damn keys are running around everywhere." So, first of all, since we're not doing our Tomb of Annihilation session this Friday, when we go next week, I'm going to straight up replay this entire scene because it's a very important, the cutscene with Withers appearing. It's a very important scene, and half the party wasn't there. And I'm going to repeat all that because that is a very important thing. And I may add that as a quest journal entry in their quest log, which should tell them. In fact, I could do that right now so I remember that the keys, the damn keys are running around everywhere. That could be an important thing. And when they see the skeleton, they will. I'm definitely going to explain it to make it as unusual as I can. Like, this could be an important thing. So I'm hoping I can relay that information without being so obvious about it. But they still don't know how many keys they need. I don't think it's in one of the Acererak warnings, is it? I don't think there's one for level 5, for example. I have to look back up on the. Let's see. So the first one, and here's the different. Here's the interesting thing: the players got confused and thought this whole first thing was all about that first puzzle with the door. The enemies opposed, one stands between them. In darkness it hides. Dawn the Masker be seen. They thought that all had to do with the door puzzle. That's not true. Only the first 2 lines were the door puzzle. And I think they'll pick up on this as we get further along. But the riddles, each riddle is one for each level, and it just kind of randomly informs a clue about one of the areas in the dungeon. So in this case, in darkness it hides is teasing the fact that inside of this devil, there's the devil face handout. I was holding up a book like an idiot. That's what it looks like. The mouth is dark and there's a shadow demon in there. So that's what teases that. Dawn the Masker be seen is a clue how to solve, let's see, which one is that? Is that Moa's, Obalaka's tomb? You're supposed to wear masks, I believe, in there in order to solve the puzzle in there. Speak No Truth to the Doomed Child is a really cool situation that could have some potential fun role-playing moments, which is there is a flame skull, and we know my players have a thing about flame skulls, thanks to our Fandelver and Apocalypse campaign. There's a flame skull who has the personality of a child, which is messed up, but I think that's really cool. The players could see this flame skull hovering in this glass case, and it just speaks to them as this poor, frightened child. And that will be something that the players will hopefully remember. And this will be a thing where, like, every session, I'm going to probably, like, put this on the screen as a reminder, because I do think it's a really fun thing to remind the players about all these different warnings. The keys turn on the inside only is a clue to Wongo's puzzle shrine, which is the, as I mentioned before, really the only one out of the first, like, 4 levels that I feel like is a complete fucking bullshit trap that I'm probably going to adjust because I just don't like its design. Not completely changed. Just I'm gonna adjust the actual, like, trap penalties and stuff because I don't really like how they balance out. But what's interesting is I read shout out to the what's his name or their name? It was the DM. It's called the DM. Shout out to the DM for sharing their session reports via the Obsidian Portal website, the recaps of their experience running through Tomb of Annihilation. I've really enjoyed reading those and seeing how a party goes through. That was a good example of their party. They did kind of go level to level, but they also explored left and right quite a bit. Their players had, like, invisibility and flying powers that they used and could kind of explore up and down. So I just have to be prepared for exploration, especially, like, Mannix's owl familiar, for example, could be just flying around like crazy. Granted, I could have, like, let's see, do the tomb dwarves have ranged attacks? I could have it get attacked. They do have crossbows. So at some point, I'll try to make sure there's a consequence for rolling around too much, but that would be a very smart thing to do. Take your reconnaissance owl and fly it around. You'd be able to see a lot of different stuff, but possibly trigger some enemies and traps as well. And what's interesting is the tomb dwarfs, I think it's just kind of up to me on how much I want to use these tomb dwarfs in terms of where they are in the dungeon. I don't believe they are necessarily meant to be in any one place except for that one workshop on level 2 where they're building Tomb Guardians. I don't even know if it mentions Withers and the Tomb Dwarves. Maintenance crew. Using the scrying pool at age 25 at area 25, Withers can command Omu's gargoyles and speak to agents on the surface world. I didn't know he could command the gargoyles. Damn, I should have been reading ahead. Legendary monsters, skeleton keys, Tomb Guardians. Doesn't mention anything about like patrols in the tomb, for example. But I could use, I plan on using Tomb Guardians and Tomb Dwarves throughout the tomb, not necessarily as like random encounters, because I don't think the tomb really needs random encounters to that effect. But if the player's long rest or short rest, that could be the kind of thing. Or maybe we have gone without combat in a while. They could turn a corner and see a bunch of, and it could be interesting. For example, they come across a trap that maybe the Tomb Dwarves are working on, and that turns into a combat encounter, or they just observe them, and then maybe they go in a secret door afterwards. I want to try to make the dungeon more active, in other words, rather than everything just kind of waiting for the players to show up, especially if the players do a thing where it's like he sends his owl familiar down like 3 levels and goes down a hallway. Then they could see like the dwarves actively working on something, versus they probably wouldn't do it if the players were nearby, because I think Withers would be a little bit more aware of that. Most parties will take it per level because they want to get as much treasure as possible on their way to the boss fight. Yeah, I could see that. Initially, they probably don't know, there could be treasure involved here, but hopefully that would be a thing for sure. Especially once they see that all these different shrines. That was the other thing I was not sure about, is how much does Withers and a Serac know about the Trickster gods? I assume they know everything. Like they slew the Trickster gods, and I guess put them here, put magic items in here. But then the Trickster gods can also inhabit the players and make them stronger, and especially make them stronger against a Serac. And so, is that something that Withers wants the players to do, or is Withers and them not fully aware that the Trickster gods have that capability of possessing players and making them stronger? So I was a little bit confused on just how much they know. I guess they would know. I mean, obviously they know it because all the Serac's warnings are about the shrines and stuff. So they know the tomb, and it's called the Tomb of the Nine Gods. They know the Trickster gods are here, or at least they were slain here. I just don't know how much they would know about the power level that the Trickster gods can provide. So I wasn't quite sure on how much I want to tell the players, for example, with the Withers dialogue scene. I did stop it before I actually finished it, and I'll repeat it as I mentioned next time we play. I was going to tell them that, the masters provided a series of clues for each level. You've already found the first one. That's not a big thing to tell the players. It's just that, hey, there are more clues throughout each level. Or I could just leave it up to the players to discover all the Trickster gods themselves and realize, because the idea is you have to solve a thing in the room. It's usually a puzzle, trap, something, or maybe a monster. And then the reward is that you can open the tomb, and there's a magic item in there. So, for example, let's start looking and preparing for what the players are going to do first thing. So, first thing first, they've met with Withers, holographically, I guess. There's this giant grinning demon face. I'm sure somebody's going to jack with the darkness, and there'll be a little shadow demon fight, or maybe just an attack. And then to the right, actually, George isn't the best example. He's got, oh, that's right. There's light up here, isn't there? So this was an interesting thing that I read that I realized later. It mentions in the book, for level 1 specifically. Let's see if I can pull up level 1, the Rotten Halls. Ceiling cracks. Thin shafts of daylight and moonlight spill through tiny rock fissures, forming pools of natural light, as shown on the above map. Now, I'm looking at the map in the book, and I can't fucking tell at all where this light is supposed to be in. It doesn't, as far as I'm aware, they did not do that. There's no symbols for light or anything like that. But Roll20 did put light in here, as you can see here. Well, maybe you can see. I'm going to have to zoom in, but these little globes, which give off 20. Each of them is a 20-foot radius of dim light, which is a kind of a cool, like. So, and I think that's just for level 1, but I think level 1 is meant to be a little bit easier to see, and you can see it's only, I guess, in these. Well, that makes sense. It's the growth areas where all the little plants are. So they get a little bit of sunlight and moonlight in there, and that's why there's some growth. So the players actually have pretty good vision in these first couple areas, and maybe that's a way to like ease them into the dungeon. So initially they can actually see pretty far, which is why you notice I actually put the skeleton key on the GM layer to start, because I want to wait until they're up here, and if they specifically start going this direction, then I'm going to put the skeleton key. So this is towards the obviously gigantic, what is it called? The grand staircase, 50 feet across, plunging down into darkness. A stone balcony winds around the walls to connect 4 archways. So immediately, I just love this open design of this dungeon. Immediately, if you walk to the left, there's a window. You can see inside. I believe you can crack this window and go that way, so we'll get there in a second. But if you go to the right, you suddenly have 4 different directions you can go in. Or I guess, yeah, 1, 2, yeah, you have 4 directions you can go in. You can go north here. You can go down here, down the staircase. You can go up here, and you can go east here. That's fucking crazy. So immediately as the DM, I have to prep all of these things, because I have no idea what direction my party's going to go in. But what I am going to do is let them see the skeleton key. It's going to be this little-sized, pint-sized skeleton with that weird head, and they're going to be able to see that because it's very distinct. And it is going to kind of yelp, run around, kind of on the wall and the ceiling and all that, so they can see that it can walk on walls. I'm going to have it run east into the Doomed Child. What is that? Moa's tomb. Because I think this is my favorite room on level 1. And what I can do as the DM is put the skeleton keys in the one place I absolutely want them to go in for each room. With the caveat of that I think they will obviously want to explore as much of the tomb as possible, I would hope. But I can specifically draw them into certain areas. So I think that would be cool. Now they don't necessarily have to follow the key, and between you and me, the key will probably be in there for a while unless the party goes and does something else, and then maybe they'll see the key do something else. I could play with that, and what's interesting is the key can definitely be running around, but I think that would be a fun motivation to take them in there. Now, the skull, there's a stone skull here at 13, which is an interesting little trap. I guess, can you act? Yeah, you can notice it. A DC 15 perception check notes that the lower jaw is unhinged. That's all you get to see. The lower jaw is unhinged. You don't notice anything else. Now, detect magic would go off, and you see transmutation magic. But each time a creature climbs through the skull's jaws, one of the flames in its eye socket snuffs out. So it's got 2 flames. The first time somebody goes in, one eye socket shuts. The second time somebody goes in, the second eye socket shuts. The third time somebody goes in, the jaws close, which is a melee attack with a +10 with 4d10 bludgeoning damage and grappled. And while grappled, the creature takes another 1d10 bludgeoning damage at the start of each of its turns, which unfortunately means I guess you got to put everybody in initiative order at that point, which is weird. When that creature exits the jaws, the flames in the skull's eye sockets reignite, the jaws open, and the trap resets. So it's interesting, there's no save there. It's an attack roll, and it doesn't mention if you exit the jaws, which I guess you have to use strength to get out. Escape DC 19, that's no joke. And my party's actually pretty bad at athletics. I would assume you could exit out either way. And there's a lot of traps like that. Like if a door shuts from above or something, it always lets you roll either way if you succeed at escaping it. Workshop and by the aboleth hanging and climbing gear from the cave roof. With my parties, they would go level by level because they don't want to leave anything at their backs, mainly because I've put them in pincher situations in previous campaigns. Interesting. There's not a whole lot of enemies in the tomb, but I could make more with the tomb dwarves. I could definitely have them be a little more active, as I mentioned, but that could be interesting. I plan on having withers be a kind of omnipotent presence, though. I don't think... I'm torn on how much I want withers to actually jack with the players and how much withers is aware of things. So, like, on the one extreme, there's that one opening monologue that I give and then nothing until they, meet with him again, maybe on level 2. And on the other end of the extreme, there's like withers constantly, like an intercom system, blaring at the players, oh, congratulations, you've solved the first Trickster God thing or something, and kind of making it more of a ongoing presence. I haven't quite decided on how much I want to involve that. Yeah, I'm kind of torn. I could see the benefits of both. I mean, there's enough going on in the tomb that I don't necessarily need to do that. And maybe do it by having the tomb dwarves more active in terms of having Wither's presence through that. Especially if they end up meeting with him on level 2, which most likely they will find him, then I probably don't necessarily have to use him as this ongoing thing. It would be pretty funny if he was an intercom system that was like, like the players make it to halfway through level 2 or something, and then he blares and says like, all right, everybody, you need to reset the trap on whatever, or hey, it's break time, or, so I don't know. I don't want to get too goofy with it, but I think it would be interesting to have it be more of like it's a theme park that Withers is running, basically. That's just super deadly. I haven't decided if the skeleton key is actually going to set off the skull jaw trap or not, in terms of does it blink out one of those eyes? It just says each time a creature, and he is a creature, so that could be really interesting. Maybe if they can see that far. Let's use Manix because he's got dark vision at this point. So right now, they crest up here. They can clearly see... Oh, interesting. The window's already open. So there's no dynamic lighting there, so they can see that. Oh, I need to look at the description, see if I need to add any more art assets to this map. Okay, so they can, in darkness, see the skull jaw. So I think I will do that. I think I'll have the skeleton key run through and have one of the lights above this skull jaw flare out, which means if the players don't go that way, I'm going to have to remember I did that. Make a note somewhere. Okay, by the way, there's already one light out because the skeleton key ran in there. Let's go ahead and create that active quest. How much do I want to tell the players about the keys? Keys are the keys. I think that's the quest pick I use. Oh, quest header. That's the same, yeah. So we're going to put this in all players' journals. And source. Let's see. Source is Mr. I like Mr. Withers also more than Withers. I think that's pretty funny. Mr. Withers. Destination question mark? Because what does he say in my dialogue scene? Guard the gate in case they make it that far. So we could also... Okay, his whole thing is... because he kind of interrupts the Sohn sisters. It sounds like they were going to berate the party, and that was literally me, like, shoving aside these other NPCs that have been chastising the players and having Withers be the new prominent NPC of the tomb. But the Sohn sisters are still going to be there. and says, "You've had your chance. Get back to the nursery. Guard the gate in case they make it that far. The damn keys are running around everywhere." Do we actually have this session originally or no? Oh, they never did go to Needles Bones. That's right. Come to the yellow banners in here too. Say Withers can dispel magic on things like Tiny Hut spell. Hell yeah, he can. Hell yeah, he can. That's an interesting conversation to have, is how to do long rests in the tomb. And I've been reading up on that, doing some research, trying to decide what I want to rule about that or how many times I want to do it. I know that the DM, literally their name is the DM, on Discord and on their recap basically said that they created a time scenario where the players had 6 long rests and they could kind of choose when they wanted to take them, but they had to take like I think a certain amount of short rests in between. But they only had a certain amount of rests before like they just reached a game over stage. So they didn't have a time limit before that. It was just like, hey, you've got this long. At this point, you only have this many long rests. Otherwise, there wasn't a penalty on resting at all. It didn't seem like there was any kind of encounters or anything to that nature. At the very least, what I want to do is, I don't want to necessarily shove random encounters at the players, but the tomb is an active dungeon, and I do want to have Withers in the Tomb dwarves resetting traps. So if the players like retreat and long rest or something, then any traps around them will definitely be reset. There are a few safe areas in the dungeon, relatively safe at least, and they do have the hut, which I could dispel it, but the only point to that is if I want to fuck with the players at all. So I don't want them to abuse long resting too much. They can't long rest too often for sure. They're willing to be some short rests in between. They just can't get the benefit of a long rest. If I do find them just wanting to stay and wait somewhere for a long time, I will probably shove a patrol at them. But the weird thing about a long rest is if you shove a random encounter at them before the long rest, it doesn't matter because they're going to get a long rest afterwards, so they'll heal all the way up. The trick is to give them a random encounter after the long rest, so they immediately have to start expending resources again. With the exception that if anybody goes down to 0 hit points, that is a chance for them to trigger that lasting injury, and that does have a more ongoing consequence. So that'd be one reason to spring a encounter on them before a rest. But I see no reason to fuck with the players at all during a short rest unless there are enemies directly around them. But for long rests, I am going to have to look at what is the best way of just making sure they don't abuse it too much. And I don't really see them necessarily doing that. I'm hoping that they play it by ear. Maybe whenever they find a relatively safe spot and they're getting pretty low, they'll think about doing a long rest. And I don't necessarily even maybe need to make any adjustments based on that. Maybe I'll just let them long rest. Maybe that's when I have an intercom come on and, after they long rest, 8 hours in the dungeon, and Withers can berate them in some way. The Stone Sisters could definitely jack with them while they're sleeping. That would be a case of why Withers would want to use Dispel Magic. Maybe that would just freak them out one time. They don't set up any kind of like guard watch or something. And Withers can dispel the magic, and then the Stone Sisters can do their nightmare haunting, which... How the hell does that work again? Night Hag. Magically touch a sleeping human on the material plane. Target has dreadful visions. If these visions last for at least 1 hour, the target gains no benefit from the rest, and its hit point maximum is reduced by 5. Holy shit. There's no save? Well, on the ethereal plane, the hag magically touches a sleeping humanoid on the material plane. A protection from evil and good spell cast on the target prevents this contact, as does a magic circle. As long as the contact persists, the target has dreadful visions. If these visions last for at least 1 hour, the target gains no benefit from its rest. and its hit point maximum is reduced by 1d10. If this reduces the target's hit point max to 0, the target dies and its soul is trapped in the hag's soul bag. Holy shit. That's pretty crazy. Every time they long rest, everyone has to roll a die and loses that many HP permanently. Woof. Yeah, that's... There's only 3 night hags. So at best they could do 3 of them. God, that's rough. I mean, there's no save. They cancel the rest. No benefit from the rest. So you just don't get the long rest. And you lose hit points. That's fucked. Jeez. Night hags are no joke. I don't know if I necessarily like that. I kind of do like the hit point reduction. I don't know if I like you just don't get the benefit of the long rest at all. Because that just, I think, breaks the game balance. At the very least, I believe the tiny hut would... Well, does it prevent them? That's interesting. Can the tiny hut just do fucking everything? Leomund, you dog. Spells and other magical effects can't extend through the dome or be cast through it. So does that mean the ethereal plane can't make it through the dome? Or, as I mentioned, I just use Withers to dispel the dome. George can see. That is true. Well, I don't necessarily like the idea of singling out 1 to 3 players and letting them not get a long rest. But I do like the idea of the night hags fucking with them at night during a long rest and reducing their hit point maximum. So they have just a very nightmarish rest. They still get the rest, but they find that they can't quite replenish all of their hit points. I feel that something is trying to pull their soul out of their body. Yeah. Yeah, now you're thinking. But I still want to put I think I still want to use the night hags because I think that puts a personable face on it. And maybe the night hags are able to do it because they're in close proximity. Because I don't think I've ever really used their nightmare haunting. I've just kind of used it as like a role-playing tool. So, yeah, I'm thinking during a long rest. God, do I just dispel the hut every time? That seems kind of shitty too. Spells and other magical effects can't extend. I think I have to, though, otherwise the hags can't do it. Can Nightmare Haunting go through a tiny hut? Probably not. So I have to dispel the hut, which I could do. Assuming Withers is still around, and I do plan on, even if they jack with him on level 2, I plan on keeping Withers around. He's got a way of just kind of teleporting around. He's going to be a pain in the ass. Then whenever they long rest, I could have the hags appear on the ethereal plane. Even if George can see them, he can't really attack them, though, on the ethereal plane, can he? Because I think they're still on the ethereal plane. Touches a sleeping humanoid on the material plane. Well, maybe that tells me they do have to go to the material plane then. Or do they? No, it says while on the ethereal plane. So I don't think they ever become targetable. So how do you prevent that? Well, I guess it says magic circle or protection from evil and good. Or a tiny hut. But again, Withers would just dispel it. Man. The other thing I could do is turn it into a I could either A, turn it into just like a wisdom save. That I think would be what a nightmare haunting would be affecting. Or B, kind of do what I did earlier in the campaign, which is turn it into like a little role-playing situation where the nightmare literally manifests as a certain scene for each character, and depending on what they do to get out of it, and then have to roll a check or a save or whatever, they could then try to avoid the penalty. So those are all different thoughts that I'm having. I do like the thought of definitely creating some kind of penalty during a long rest. Because I mean, short rest is designed for dungeons. You can short rest without much consequence. Granted, it's still like an hour, so there could be people shuffling around, but for the most part, you can short rest without much consequence. But a long rest in a dungeon that's very aware of you, there definitely should be some kind of consequence there. And I do like the idea of using some form of the nightmare haunting. Probably not a no save, no rest benefit version, because that seems a little crazy. But definitely something along the lines of the hit point maximum reduction. That's pretty legit. And at that point, I could have it affect everybody, or if there's only 3 hags, I guess I could just choose 3 players. Maybe everybody rolls like a random 1d20, and the 3 lowest rolls have to deal with the night hags, just to let the dice decide at that point. They shouldn't have to long rest for a little while, but that is the thing. All right, so back what I was doing. Why is that font so gihugent? Okay, just gonna be big. This was, let's see. Did I use we or you when I actually write these quest logs? I forget. You, okay. I don't want to presume. Let's dictate. When you entered the tomb, you saw a magical projection of a corpse-like figure who introduced himself as Mr. Withers. As the tomb's what should I call it? Like chief engineer? What did he describe himself as? Mr. Withers. I am its architect and caretaker. It's the tomb's caretaker, I guess. He welcomed you to the tomb and hoped you would die horribly. The most nourishing souls. Also mentioned a gate, and he also mentioned gate, a nursery, and keys. Speaking to the Sohn sisters. There we go. That's kind of a quest log for the players. Enter the tomb. You saw a magical projection of a corpse-like figure introduce himself as the tomb's caretaker, Mr. Withers. He welcomed you to the tomb and hoped you would die horribly, for strong adventurers provide the most nourishing souls. He also mentioned a gate, a nursery, and keys when speaking to the Sohn sisters. Keys running around everywhere. All right. What's the title? I could just go ahead and say the skeleton gate, and that could be a tease. Video games kind of do that. They put the title of the quest on there. Is that what it's called? The skeleton gate? Yeah, skeleton gate. I'm just gonna go do that. We're gonna call it the skeleton gate. So that'll be the clue that I'm giving the players about the whole needing these keys. I'm not telling them, where the keys are, where the gate is, or any kind of hints about that. But whenever they find and get a key, I will add it to this quest log and say, like, you found a key or you found a odd skeleton with a blah 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 thing, and I'll add it to this. Excuse me. I'll add it to this quest log, and that will be hopefully the way that players will realize, especially when they find the key number 2, and they'll be like, shit, we gotta find these. I don't think they'll still know how many keys they need, though, until they actually see that skeleton gate handout, so that'll be interesting. All right, so what do I need to be looking at? So we've got this whole damn area, which they see a tomb dwarf for the first time disappear behind a wall. That's really cool. It's going to be a nightmare because Mannix's owl can just fly around throughout like multiple levels, which I need to actually pull these out. Unlike most dungeons where you can be like, okay, they're here, so I need to plan these rooms, and then now they're here, I need to plan these rooms. It's like, no, I need to plan this whole goddamn dungeon at least through like 5 levels in case they come up that far. Let's see. Meanwhile, we can archive pretty much everything else because we are in the tomb from here on out, I believe. There we go. So we've got level 1. Hopefully they will stick to the higher levels, at least initially. This is what level 2 looks like, which there's the secret door that the tomb dwarf appears on. We don't want advanced fog of war. We do want to restrict movement. Don't know why that's not on by default. And then the plaques on each level, which there's not one on level 1 because they got it on the obelisk, but there is a plaque with different Acererak warnings on each one. Oh man, these are right on the map. That's funny. I don't usually draw things like that on the maps. I know for level 2, this is a really weird thing right here. That's the only bizarre thing that I don't like this dungeon does is this is like a weird portal to a parallel dimension dungeon of the Tomb of the Nine Gods. It's the exact same. It's just a parallel dimension of it. And if you just go around, you'll end up, I guess, on the other side coming at, and then there's like none of your friends are there. But it's the same dungeon. Just a really weird thing to wrap your head around, and doesn't translate well to Roll20 when you have all the physical components here. So initially I was going to save this as something else, or even block this off and just not include this. And the only reason I'm not going to do that is because it is included in the goddamn level 2 Acererak warning, which I do like the warning, so I'd have to edit that, which is the ring is a path to another tomb. It's the first goddamn clue on this one. So instead, I'm going to take a clue from, I believe the DM did this, again, in our recaps and stuff in the Discord chat, that it is a portal to the ethereal realm, and that's where a lot of the hags can hang out. So it's actually, if you want to go and like fight the hags, you you can go into the spirit realm, and basically you can go around the entire dungeon and see it all from the like weird effects of the spirit realm. You wouldn't be able to interact with anything, but it also would interact with you. So potentially that could be, actually that might be game breaking. I guess would you still? I have to think about this now. That might be too much. I mean, the idea is the Stone Sisters will attack you here if you try going down that path. I don't know. I don't like this one at all. This is the one that I really couldn't wrap my head around how to fix this. Is I don't like the whole ring mirror tomb thing. It's also weird. There's a dead body here. There's no actual trap, so it's just a way for the players to like freak out about nearby traps. But it's a very odd situation. Not that I don't think the players will necessarily make it this far, but again, you just don't know, especially what they can see, because they can just tromp down here and just keep exploring. There is a whole back path to Withers' office with a bunch of claws, which if this turns into an actual fight, I'll probably put actual like tomb guardians in here to make it more interesting. But have Withers escape for sure. But this is like, you can easily make it down here, because again, Mannix will see these secret doors as soon as he passes by them. And then this area, this spiral staircase goes all the way down to level 5. It's just a very easy, like, backdoor path to get to everything. Well, not very easy. I guess, I mean, there's already... It's not like this grand staircase is trapped either. But it is weird how... It's a little disappointing how quick and easy you can get to Withers' workstation, basically. I wish it was, like, one level down or something. Because you hate to show them the behind-the-scenes thing too early. But I do think that meeting with Withers could turn into another fun scenario for sure. So the players could go downstairs to level 2. They could go to the right to follow the skeleton key and meet up with Napartak, who is a child as a flame skull, which I think is just a really fucked up situation. I'm totally gonna roleplay it as like, hello, I'm scared. Like, just this really chilling, voice of just this poor child that you want to help, but they're a fucking flame skull. And of course, the warning is speak no truth to the doomed child. And it will the idea is it gets more and more agitated as you roll deception checks to try to, like, not reveal that it's a fucking disembodied flame skull. Flame skull normally would be a pretty scary opponent, but the party's level 9. They could probably even put the jump on it and not be that painful, but swarms of undead spiders spill out of the walls, which is fucking creepy as hell. Which these are only CR half, so they're not that strong. They can do a deceptive amount of damage if they hit. It's only a +3, but 10 damage on a hit is pretty solid. So obviously that would happen as soon as the flame skull gets agitated. I guess I can go ahead and roll hit points also. I know, that's what I'm thinking. I don't like the no benefit of the long rest, Lumpy. Let's see. Oh, Napartek is still a flame skull, right? That's not a unique stack block. I don't think so. But apparently it's a unique character sheet for some reason. Flame skulls are cool because they can cast Fireball. Magic Missile, Flaming Sphere, all these are good spells. Fire Rays. But as a single enemy, it's not going to do shit. And an AC of 13, 40 hit points. I mean, Kaless is killing that right off the bat, so it's not really a very difficult fight. 43 hit points for Napartak. Better than undead snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Yeah, we kind of did our snake thing. I don't want to... My wife didn't murder me, so we'll consider that a win on getting through the snake dungeon. So I guess we could roll for the swarms. I mean, that'd be kind of creepy, right? All the swarms come out. And really, that's kind of a fun scenario anyway. None of these things are going to last very long, and if somebody casts an AoE, they're all going to die. But, if they get the jump on anybody, or The swarms could maybe even cause a surprise round. A Partic probably wouldn't, but I could definitely see the undead swarms coming out as a surprise round. That could be really interesting, unless the party is like poking around in there quite a bit. 5d8. 10? 10? What the fuck? That's a horrible roll. Oh my goodness. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seems like a pretty good amount. We're just going to delete these so I can copy and paste my few adjustments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to put one more in there and make it 7. That makes it... No, we're going to put 8. We're going to put 8 swarms. Fuck you, players. 8 swarms of spiders. Just because they're glass cannons, like... I don't think it's going to make the fight last that much longer. Especially if I'm rolling 10 hit points. Jesus. 18. 18. That's not a good number either. All right. My hit point roller's broken. Well below average on the first 3 of these. Average on that one. All right, so the rest need to all be above average, right? Woo! 32. Giveth and taketh away. 22 is average. 24 is above average. All right, we get one more well above average, and I won't complain. Not quite. Still below. I had that one good one. All right, so that could definitely be it. And I think that's the only thing in here is it's basically just a combat encounter. Technically a social check if you are messing with the tomb while talking to the skull, then like if you're in and out pretty quick, you know, you open the tomb, you get the thing. It's a staff of the Python, which is I think kind of a cool staff. It's the one that can fight on its own. I wonder if anybody would actually use that staff. Because you have to, as soon as you touch it, you have to attune to it. I think as soon as you touch it, you have to open it with a DC 15 athletics check. The spirit of Moa tries to inhabit any character who touches the staff. So you don't have to attune to it, which is interesting. I should have these in here then. Staff of the Python. Where's magic items? How's it already 12:20? Damn. I'm going to start doing these streams for longer. I have too much fun. Python. No, staff. Staff. S. Staff of the Python. It's only usable by a cleric, druid, or warlock. That's kind of lame. I don't know why magic items have those kind of requirements. That feels like older edition of D&D having those kind of requirements. You can use an action to speak the staff's command word and throw the staff on the ground within 10 feet of you. The staff becomes a giant constrictor snake under your control and acts on its own initiative count. Oh, that's not the one I was thinking then. Using a bonus action to speak command word again, you return the staff to its normal form. So you can just summon a giant constrictor snake? That's actually badass. Little CR2 creature. You can mentally command the snake within 60 feet of you. I'm sure Heather's going to love that. Oh, wow. If the snake is reduced to 0 hit points, it dies and reverts to its staff form. The staff then shatters and is destroyed. So you got to make sure it doesn't fucking die. Well, snakes have pretty good hit points. So you actually want to revert it back to its Pokeball form. Well, that's interesting. Unfortunately, there's only one character who could use that out of our 5-person party, and that's Theron. I don't know how often Theron would, or maybe he would like to summon a snake. I don't know. Would they be able to identify it without... Because the weird thing is, as soon as they touch it... So you could have somebody, for example, you could have anybody grab the staff, and then the Trickster god would try to inhabit that person, but only a certain character could attune to it. So the weird thing is, you could have somebody using. I always thought the magic item was supposed to be very closely tied to the Trickster God, to where like if you wanted to use that item, then it would inhabit you. So yeah, so right off the bat, we're gonna get rid of the class requirement things. I don't like that. You are witnessing me doing balancing in real time. Fuck that. Anybody can summon a giant constrictor snake. Okay, and Moa is the snake one, so that kind of is thematic. Because I'm thinking like, and maybe that means, well, maybe I need to include the attunement on there though. Do all the rest of them require attunement? In fact, that's one of the spirit's abilities, isn't it? It gives you an extra attunement. Let's see, what else is there? Ring of Protection in Obolaka. And a Mace of Terror for Wongo. So Ring of Protection and Mace of Terror. Ring of Protection requires attunement. And Mace of Terror requires attunement. So I actually need to add requires attunement to the Python staff. I don't want to get rid of that. Copy that. I just want to get rid of the class requirement. Okay. So I guess the inhabiting doesn't actually matter if you use the magic item or not. And the bummer is at this point in their campaign, in their careers, I think most of them have 3 items attuned. So there could be a case where they don't even want to use the items. And I'm tempted to just give them this item as a free attunement, except one of the Trickster God's abilities, Obolaka, is that the host can attune to 1 additional magic item. So that's interesting. I guess I could still make it a. You can't pass around the Trickster Gods. If Orvix is still alive, Orvix will hopefully be able to. Which I'm really pissed the players just do not give a shit about this guy. This poor guy. Oh yeah, he worked for the Red Wizards, okay, but man, they're being cruel to him. Of course, I guess our 2 lawful good players weren't here this last session when Orvix got injured. Maybe he'll be able to explain the whole Trickster God thing, but yeah, I don't know how that would work. If somebody grabs the staff, they become inhabited by that Trickster God, but then they decide, oh, I actually don't want to attune to this item, you have it. And then that just feels weird to me thematically that somebody else has the item that is associated with that Trickster God. So is it more interesting to allow that flexibility and the fact that some of these items might just get thrown into backpacks and not used? Or is it more interesting to, as soon as somebody grabs it, it forces that character to be attuned to this item if they become inhabited by that Trickster God? But if they become unattuned, whatever, they can't get rid of the Trickster God that easily. They can't shed them. In fact, the only way I believe you can actually get rid of them is by having another Trickster God inhabit your body. Oh, never mind. You can also cast Dispel Evil and Good. That's a thing. Interesting. All right, so that could easily be a non-fight. Hopefully, just a fun social encounter. But I thought that was the most interesting room just because of the social aspect of it. So I was gonna have the skeleton key go in there. It's got a secret door that leads down to the water area, which there's not much going on in the water other than there's a giant waterfall that leads down to level fucking 5. So again, the players could just go all the way down there. There's a mimic chest across the way, which is kind of fun. Nothing, however, all the way up until. In fact, if you go left here, there's a grate that the players can open and plop down into the water. I believe there's a bunch of poisonous gas here, and there's a chest that can like trap you and dunk you underwater down here. The water is not terribly. The waterway isn't as exciting as I was hoping for. And then this is a magnet statue. Ooh, I need to make another statue here. Look at all this work I've got to still do, and it's fucking 12:30. Well, you know, it's a good thing that we've got 2 weeks of crafting annihilation before we're actually going to go with our session. What's the coolest looking? Let's make one of those green statues. That's probably fine. It's not on the GM layer. It's on the token layer. This is a fucking magnet that pulls everybody from like across the room. Although I don't like it necessarily disintegrating people's equipment. I just think that's such a shitty thing to do in general. Like the rust monster, all that shit that you just destroy people's equipment. That's such like old school like cruelty that I'm not a fan of. Okay with like medium amounts of cruelty, but disintegrating hard-earned loot, especially when there's not like, you know, a town you can go get more loot at. This one is you're really sequestered and away from shit. So that is a magnet. I would probably do that as more of a yeah, they do take bludgeoning damage, so they just chunk, which is kind of fun. There's a fountain up there that causes a D4 of random effects, most of which are terrifying. One of them changes your sex. Creature drinking the water magically changes sex. That's so fucking bizarre. These are all so crazy. You lose the ability to speak for 8 hours, so you can't cast spells. Or you just take a con saving throw or take 8d10 necrotic damage, or you gain 2d10 temporary hit points. All kinds of crazy shit. The sex one is crazy. And then Obolaka's tomb, which is, I think, the mask one. 2 large statues of bears. Is there a bear statue by any chance? Or should I just, what was the one statue I used with the Gallery of Tricksters? There we go. We'll use these lions, whatever. Lions and bears. Oh my. There we go. It's weird how detailed the maps are, and then whenever there's a statue, it's just this fucking circle with a star. I don't know why. Two large statue bears group of 5-foot diameter bronze disc embossed with a dozen glaring eyes. 6 desiccated corpses slump on thrones in niches along the walls. Ooh, I could even make... Because originally they had these whites just sitting here, but I think there's a skeleton I can add. I love that fountain. If you want to mess with your players, make it so the first sip results in the temp HP. Yeah! That's what I saw that the recap I was reading did, which is fucking funny. And then everybody's like, all right, let's sip it up. And then it's just bad news from there. That is pretty funny. There we go. These are some sitting skeletons. Put these on the token layer, and then the whites are on the GM layer. Which means I need to move all of you a little bit out of the way. Move, move, move. And put these skeletons on board. This is the Don the Mask or Be Seen. Man, the first time this Trickster God thing happens, though, it's going to be wild. Players have no idea what that entails. It'll also be interesting once they realize that that God gives them a power, but also gives them unique insight into like certain areas and dungeon traps and a flaw that they inhabit. So hopefully that goes over pretty well. All right, so all of those are... So these are tokens that I'm highlighting. So let's put these on the map layer. And then the whites are still the whites. Okay. All right, and then this one, let's see. The eyes are spare statue this tightly. Statue's large object. Any creature wearing one of the whites' paper mache masks can push aside the lid of the sarcophagus with a successful athletics check. To all other creatures, the lid is magically locked and cannot be opened without a knock spell or DC 20 dex check. Secret doors are set at the back of 2 alcoves. So they can find a way to the water and just going around this way, which unfortunately they are. If they go this way, they're going to see those stairs. They're going to take them down to the back door of the friggin' Withers' workshop already. Let's see. If eyes on the bronze disc spot intruders in the tomb, the whites rise and attack. Those eyes have dark vision out to a range of 30 feet. If the eyes spot any humanoid inside the tomb, the whites awaken and attack. The disc of eyes can't perceive any humanoid that dons one of the paper mache masks worn by the whites, nor can it see in magical darkness or while covered with a blanket or similar object. Okay, so the puzzle here is there's just a bunch of eyes right here that can see out to 30 feet. How do you get the... Okay, so you'd have to use some kind of magic or something. Because as soon as you step into this room, you're going to be seen. So you'd have to use like a mage hand or something to grab the orb. Because it doesn't say it has a perception, so I don't know if you'd be able to stealth. Huh. I mean, it's too bad because the clue is to don the mask or be seen, but as soon as you enter this room, you have no chance to actually grab the mask before the eyes see you, and immediately all the whites rise up and attack, which is going to be a bummer if somebody literally steps right in the door and all these whites suddenly rise, and then you can just kind of step out and just range attack them to death. Although I guess whites do have... they've got like bows and shit, don't they? Yeah, they got longbows. All right. Something. It's interesting that a lot of the tomb areas are more puzzly or trap related, but like the first 2 the players are probably going to see are basically just pure combat, which is going to be Obolakas with the whites and Moas with the flame skull and swarms of spiders. So it actually kind of front loads a lot of the combat situations. Mr. The skeleton key, the level 1 skeleton key is going to be visible basically as soon as the players turn the corner and go down this hallway, which I need to put them back where they were, like there. Once they make it to like the grand staircase, they'll see this key here. I'll put it on the token layer, and then I'm going to run the key into area 14 Moa's tomb, and I will actually have it activate one of the lights on the skull. So they'll be able to see the skull in action, the skeleton key running that way, and they can choose to go that way or not, but that will be where the key resides for the time being, and then they can kind of choose where to go from there. And if they do level 1 first, we're probably going to be looking at Obolaka's tomb, Moa's tomb. Haven't looked at the Wongo's tomb. I need to make some adjustments to Wongo's tomb. I don't think we'll make it there next session, but I'll have to prep all of this. And I'll have another week of Crafting Annihilation to prep the rest of this, and I don't have to spend any time doing a recap because we won't have played Tomb tomorrow because we've got our one shot tomorrow. So I will be spending more time doing a recap and planning out more of the tomb, probably sticking to level 1, but maybe doing at least a little bit of the staircases for the others, just so I've got things ready in case the players do some scouting ahead. So that'll be very helpful. So I've gone way over my time for Crafting Annihilation. Reminder to patrons, we're doing our DM Roundtable recording tonight, 9 o'clock Central U.S. time. Be there or be square on Discord for patrons, DM Roundtable tonight. We're doing our one-shot with Chris, guest DM, tomorrow instead of our Tomb of Annihilation stream, but it will be at the normal time, 9 p.m. Central time, US. And then next week, we'll resume our Tomb of Annihilation adventures, but I will definitely see you all on Crafting Annihilation before then. Very excited about the one-shot. Get to be a player. Excellent. So thank you all for joining me for crafting, and I will see you next time.